Hey everyone, welcome back to Mortgage and Real Estate News for Dallas, Fort Worth, and beyond. I'm Christina Amoah, your local mortgage loan officer, realtor, and host of this podcast. Today we're diving into the latest numbers and trends shaping the Dallas housing market. If you've been following along, you know we've talked a lot about shifting strategies and creative financing, like assumable mortgages and seller concessions. But today, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what's actually happening with prices, demand, and competition right now. So let's start with the headline. Dallas's median sale price just hit $486,000. That's up 13% year over year, which is honestly a pretty big jump, especially when you compare it to the national average. Dallas is now about 7% higher than the national median, and the overall cost of living here is a tick above the national average, about 1% higher. So it's not just your imagination if you feel like homes are getting pricier. Now, what does that mean for buyers and sellers? Well, the market is what Redfin calls somewhat competitive. It scores a 56 out of 100 on their compete score. That means homes are getting about 2 offers on average and selling in around 41 days. That's a little slower than last year when it was closer to 36 days, but still things are moving. And interestingly, the average home is selling for about 3% below list price, but the hot homes, those really desirable ones, are still going for around list and can go pending in as little as 19 days. If you look at nearby cities, you'll see some differences. Plano, for example, is a bit more competitive with a score of 67, and homes there are going pending in about 33 days on average. Frisco is similar to Dallas with a score of 57 and homes selling in about 43 days. So if you're shopping around the Metroplex, you'll notice these subtle shifts in how quickly things move and how aggressive you need to be with your offers. And what does somewhat competitive really mean for buyers? I get this question a lot. It's not the wild 20 offer bidding wars we saw a couple years ago, but you can't exactly lowball either. A realtor partner who I was working with as their mortgage lender had a client in Plano recently who thought they could come in 5% under asking because the home had been on the market for a month. Well, turns out 2 other buyers had the same idea, and suddenly they were in a mini bidding war. They ended up going just a hair over list, but the lesson is, even in a somewhat competitive market, you've got to be ready to move fast and put your best foot forward, especially in those neighborhoods where demand is still strong. So, bottom line, prices are up, homes are still moving, and while you might have a little more breathing room than during the peak frenzy, you still need to be prepared and strategic. And as always, local market knowledge is key. What works in Dallas proper might not fly in Plano or Frisco. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about what's driving some of these trends, specifically migration patterns and what's happening at the neighborhood level. Dallas continues to be a magnet for out-of-state buyers. Over the last few months, the biggest influx has been from Los Angeles, Seattle, and San Francisco. I mean, it's not surprising folks from the West Coast are looking for more space, lower taxes, and honestly, a different pace of life. And Dallas offers all of that, plus a strong job market. On the flip side, about a quarter of Dallas homebuyers are looking to move out, with Phoenix, Austin, and Houston being the top destinations. So there's a lot of movement both in and out, but the net effect is still a pretty strong demand for homes here. Now, if you're curious about what's actually selling, let's look at a few recent sales. We've seen everything from a $59,000 fixer-upper on Twyman to a $695,000 townhome on Greenbrier Lane. There's a huge range, and that's one of the things I love about Dallas. You've got options, whether you're a first-time buyer or looking for something more upscale, and the days on market can vary a lot too. Some homes are sitting for months, while others, like that Owega Ave property, sold in just 12 days. buyers right now are really focused on value and location. School districts are still a huge driver, especially in North Dallas and the suburbs. So if you're moving in from out of state, don't underestimate how competitive those neighborhoods can be, especially if you're targeting the best schools. As for turnover, neighborhoods like Oak Cliff, Lake Highlands, and Far North Dallas are seeing a lot of activity. Some of that is driven by affordability, some by lifestyle walkability, access to transit, or just the vibe of the area. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, micro local trends really matter. What's hot in one zip code might be totally different just a few miles away. So whether you're buying, selling, or just watching the market, keep an eye on those migration patterns and neighborhood trends. They're shaping the market in real time. All right, before we wrap up, I want to touch on something that's becoming more and more important for buyers and homeowners: climate and environmental risks. Dallas has always had its share of weather, but the data is starting to show some real long-term trends that could impact home values and insurance costs. Here's what we know. About 12% of properties in Dallas are at risk of severe flooding over the next 30 years. That's over 22,000 homes. Wildfire risk is also moderate, with 21% of properties, so nearly 67,000 homes at some risk of wildfire. But the big one, wind and heat. Nearly every property in Dallas, 99%, is at major risk from severe wind events and extreme heat in the coming decades. We're talking about more frequent storms, higher wind gusts, and a projected 242% increase in days over 110 degrees in the next 30 years. That's wild. So what does that mean for buyers? Well, you've got to factor these risks into your decision making. Insurance costs are already rising in some areas, and certain neighborhoods may see more volatility in home values if they're especially prone to flooding or fire. I had a first-time buyer in the West End last year, right after that big storm. You might remember it, and she was really anxious about future weather events. We spent a lot of time looking at flood maps, talking to insurance agents, and making sure she understood what she was getting into. It's not about scaring people off, but about being informed and prepared. If you're thinking about buying, ask your agent about flood zones, wildfire risk, and what kind of insurance you'll need. And if you already own, it's a good time to review your coverage and maybe even invest in some upgrades like better roofing or drainage to protect your investment. All right, that's a wrap for today's episode. We covered a lot on prices, competition, migration, and those all-important climate risks. As always, I hope you feel a little more empowered and informed. If you've got questions or want to dig deeper into any of these topics, reach out anytime and tune in next time. We'll keep tracking the trends and bringing you the latest from the Dallas-Fort Worth market. If you need a well-informed, experienced mortgage professional or realtor to help with your next home sale or purchase, my contact information is in the channel description. Thanks for listening. Take care, folks.